Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. This is the Nonprofit HR Peer Group. I'm Julie Struble with Charitable Advisors. And today, the topic of our presentation is Empowering Nonprofits, Engaging HR for Human Resources. And by now, we all know AI is not a trend, it's here to stay. And if you haven't been tooling on ChatGPT or other large language models, that's okay. And we hope today you're going to get a little bit of a nudge to get out there and start implementing this or trying it out. I do have a story that I think that you're going to find interesting. Brian Ornder, who's the president at Charitable Advisors, was asked to facilitate a meeting with 16 nonprofit leaders and asking them how are they integrating AI in their nonprofit organizations. So those are local organizations here in the central Indiana area. And the results were two organizations, they weren't using it at all. They were just going on with business as usual. And two organizations were using it daily and using more of the advanced automated features. And everyone else was kind of filling in as far as the bell curve, but many of them still dabbling with it and experimenting with it. So, no matter where you are at, where you land, you're in good company here today. But before we begin with our presentation, let me make just a couple brief announcements. First off, I want to share the Work for the Nonprofit Make a Difference campaign is going to be starting in October. This is our third campaign, and this is where local nonprofit staff share short videos of why they love working at their nonprofit, why they enjoy nonprofit work. And then Charitable Advisors promotes this across our social media platforms to boost visibility and to inspire interest in nonprofit careers. We've done this a couple other times, and we find that there's an uptick of new accounts and more applications for jobs in our job board platform. So we're going to start in October. And if you received an email saying, hey, applications are open, I hate to tell you this, they've already closed. We filled them up in 3 hours. I know that email just went out today, but we will have another campaign next spring if you would like to take advantage of it. But in the meantime, be checking out our social media channels. And when you see these videos, there's some way that you can help us out by liking, commenting, and sharing, help to get more promotion amongst them. And let's move on to my second announcement. We have released the 2025 Central Indiana Salary and Benefit Survey Report. This report offers 26 of the most popular nonprofit positions, and it is sorted by number of staff, your annual budget, and then also by the different sectors within the nonprofit industries. It also includes typical benefits for the executive director. This is a great tool to use for hiring as well as planning your 2026 budget. And we hear quite often that this is the favorite resource that we provide. So you could download this for free, go to our website, charitableadvisors.com, go to the resource tab, and then go to salary surveys reports. We are able to offer this free thanks to our generous sponsors, Barnes Denning, NFP, Charitable Allies, and the National Bank of Indianapolis. All right, let's get on to today's presentation. Today, we invite Susan Ryder. She is the president at Human Capital Concepts. She has 20 years experience leading strategy and compliance, leadership, and organizational growth. And a couple of her accolades include Distinguished Service Award and recognized as one of the most influential women in benefit advising. Susan has a heart for nonprofits and has served on several nonprofit boards, and she is the president-elect of the National Association of Benefits and Insurance Professionals. We are lucky to have Susan Ryder with us here today. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Thank you for being with us and sharing on this important topic today, Susan.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you're enjoying this beautiful weather that we have this afternoon. And this is interactive, so I cannot see the chat while I'm presenting because I only have one screen today. But feel free to interrupt me. I'll ask some questions throughout. This is really for you to gain knowledge, and you might have some follow-up questions. My contact information will be on the last slide, so we can certainly have conversations offline. So if we are thinking about AI, who here has used AI in some form or fashion? You just want to use the emoji to raise your hand? Okay. Awesome. So those of you who are in HR versus an executive role, you probably use AI more often, would be my speculation, but I could be wrong. But when we think about ways in which we can automate things, it's a lot of times it's to remove some of the administrative burdens. And that might be because in HR or as an executive, we're wearing multiple hats and we have a very lean team and we just have things kind of coming at us all the time. And so we need to find more efficient ways to do something. One example that most of you probably have in play, maybe not 10 years ago, but is an HRIS system where you can do all of your employee onboarding, performance management, even benefit enrollment, even e-learning, right? All those types of things are ways in which we can automate the day-to-day tasks that we're doing and then have more time to focus on people. When we're thinking about it from an efficiency perspective, nonprofits are always looking for ways to maximize every single dollar. And so many times tools like AI will help you do that. Making sure that we're in compliance, though, is always really important. So fun fact, I'm in law school. I actually just finished my AI research paper and it just got published. Cassandra, I haven't been able to tell you that yet. And anyways, one of the things that I learned firsthand, because we were challenged to use AI to do some of the research, is that AI a lot of times is inaccurate. So if you are working in human resources or you're creating a form for like a performance review or maybe a performance improvement plan or something like that, you need to really be careful, check links, fact check information. I know there was one activity that I did in law school and over 50% of the information was not accurate, meaning it gave me wrong links to the EEOC, it gave me wrong information to the Department of Labor, it had inaccurate statutes. So lots of different things we just need to be careful from a compliance and risk management perspective. When we're thinking about personalization, all of our employees, our staff, they all need to receive information in different ways, and they might be at different places in their career. They could be new grads, right? In nonprofit space, we use a lot of interns and things, and they might not be quite as sophisticated. And then we have others that have been in the workplace for a long time, and we're throwing a lot of new things at them, and change can be difficult. So we just need to make sure that we're personalizing things and meeting our people where they are. But especially in nonprofits, as it relates to maybe competing for salaries, we can't always give the greatest salaries because our budgets are more limited than the for-profit sector, and maybe we have to do creative things like give more PTO or have some flex time or, just different ways to help meet all the generations where they are. AI also lets us tailor things like recognition programs or engagement surveys, things like that. We all probably shop, I would speculate, at Amazon. And Amazon always knows what our history is with shopping, right? Because we have suggestions. So a lot of people think that we've only had AI around for a few years, but the reality is it's been around for over 20. And that's really important to understand that it's not new. It's just we're using it in new ways. Same thing happens with Facebook or LinkedIn when you're on it, right? So if you have been shopping online using the same device that you check those other things, all of a sudden you're going to start getting, advertisements for things that you were just talking about. And it's like kind of scary. How does it know what I was talking about? It's suddenly in my face, right? That's AI, or one version of AI. We also have to think about making sure that our nonprofits are future ready. And a lot of that is going to come down to automation and ensuring that people have bandwidth. And one way to help with bandwidth is to find things that can automate some of the tasks that are very repetitive that really don't require a human. There are a lot of AI tools that you can train so it becomes the voice of how your organization typically speaks or how you as an individual speaks as well. And it's quite frightening sometimes. But again, always make sure to fact check. It's really important. Any questions before we move on? Okay. So if we think about freeing up human resources to really focus on our people, I think that's really important to be people centric. And so for nonprofits, we already talked about the fact that you're running very lean, you're wearing multiple hats, and you can't physically be there with people and not in your office with a closed door working on tasks if you're bottlenecked. And so really finding ways to help you do things more efficiently will be critical for the future. This is where, you know, things like processing benefits, processing payroll, especially when you have folks that are salary versus hourly, there's a lot more things you can do from an automation perspective. Um, Even being able to pull reports for grants and things, the more that you have in your HRIS system that you can then extract via queries to then report back for each of your grants is always going to be critical as well too. Probably nothing that you didn't already know there. So again, just to reiterate, making sure that we're streamlining some of those repetitive tasks, which are applications, could be scheduling, could be benefit administration, onboarding, all those things. Accuracy is really important to make sure. So just because you've pulled something through an AI platform doesn't mean it's always accurate. So you do need to double check. Again, AI is trained by humans, so there's still human error. And unfortunately, there's still people that do really bad things and maybe don't train it the right way. So beyond like just pulling and extracting data, you also need to think about your infrastructure internally, making sure you have things like cybersecurity insurance and other protections. So work with your PNC broker to make sure that you have those right plans based on what tools and resources you're using that might be tied to technology is always really important. Making sure that your people are all trained on how to use it, setting up SOPs. Those are standard operating procedures for people that are not familiar with that acronym. But just making sure everyone's doing things per your protocol is really important. And then making sure that you have policies and procedures in your handbook that protect you as an organization as well. Additionally, for those of you that might be doing some strategic planning at this juncture in the year in preparation for next year or your fiscal year that starts in July, you might think about where does AI play a role in the short term, near term, and long term strategy of your organization. Any questions? Okay, Julie's going to help me monitor the chat. So if you have a question, feel free to put it in there. So if we think about some of the practical applications of AI, what are you all doing to attract and retain talent? What are things that you're using today that maybe could be automated in the future? Anyone? All right. Well, maybe later you all will feel more comfortable participating, but some of the things that I help a lot of clients with, job descriptions. There's a lot of tools out there that help you automate aspects of that so that all your job descriptions are created in a consistent format with similar wording so that it really reflects your brand. Um, a lot of applicants are using it for purposes of um, generating their resumes, um, helping with cover letters. We're seeing a lot of folks use it for DEIB or unconscious bias. Yes, there's been some executive orders, but that doesn't mean that these things have gone away. They're just being used in different ways than maybe they were before. Um, and then also automating a lot of your onboarding paperwork is really important, helping with some of those workflows. There's a lot of paper collection that we have at the beginning of an employee's journey. And so making sure that the tax forms are automated, making sure that things like direct deposit, I-9 verification, all of those things in most HRIS systems can be automated, and you can build workflows so that it goes to the right person next for the appropriate approval process. And then also making sure that folks have access to e-learning. So one of the things I always hear from organizations, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit, is that we need to upskill our talent. And one of the most economical ways to do that is through e-learning platforms. And a lot of the HRIS systems do have a relationship with an e-learning vendor. And it's pretty minimal cost. There are certainly software solutions out there that cost a lot more that are really, extravagant, but usually a nonprofit, that's not in their budget. So, and then if we think about the next phase of the journey, so now they're here, now what do we do, right? So thinking about those employee engagement surveys or even something called a stay interview where you check in on a specific cadence, no right or wrong, but making sure that people have access to the right tools and resources to do their job effectively, make sure that they're happy. All those things can be done through these types of surveys. A lot of organizations are talking about burnout and mental health, and there's a lot of tools that are available even for those as well. So, anyone use any engagement tools that leverage AI?
If you don't mind if I read some of the comments in chat, Susan.
Please, that would be great.
Onboarding. Someone else says knowing who to contact on staff for various issues, writing performance-based job descriptions. Someone else said we use an applicant tracking system that pushes posting out to other job boards, about 30 different job boards, saving us time of duplication and cross promotion. And then we do have a question saying, are there lower cost e-learning vendors that you recommend?
Mm. So the lowest cost e-learning vendors are typically tied to your HRIS platform. I know a lot of organizations are also using LinkedIn Learning, and those are probably the most economical. If you have employee benefits, many times your benefit broker or your PNC broker who does your business insurance, they'll have access to either like Zywave or they'll have access to Mineral, and both of those have an e-learning module that you might be able to subscribe to at a minimal cost. Any other questions, Julie, before we move on?
Not at this time.
Okay, awesome. So again, work with your brokers on the benefit side. They can help you automate some of your health plan, dental, vision, life, disability, 401k enrollment features. Many of them have platforms that can talk to an HRIS system. And then on the PNC side, a lot of times they have different tools and resources to also help you with things like your OSHA reporting and things like that, depending upon your size. All right. So now if you remove your HR and leadership hat and you put on your employee hat, think about the things that might be nice, right? From an AI perspective. So what if there were ways that technology could create a customized solution for you based on your goals, based on your position, and all other things related to your professional and personal goals, right? That's in some ways here, but there will be more of that probably over the next 5 years, is what we anticipate. Also, having some automated recognition programs. So, my company has now been purchased by a larger entity, and so now our HRIS platform sends automated messages like "Happy birthday," "Happy work anniversary." It will send messages like "Great, you completed all of your training," or just like little things to kind of keep you motivated. And it does that because of other data points that are in the technology. So again, someone has to train it. The system has to be set up, but that work up front really helps save time on the back end. If we think about proactive engagement, that would be those real-time surveys we were talking about a little bit earlier, making sure that we're identifying early signs of burnout or disengagement among our team are really critical. And those will help you plan. Maybe it's planning for succession or planning for additional staff because people are, doing way too much in the hours that they work in a normal day, things like that. Data is king, right? So a lot of us are data decision makers, and AI helps with some of that. If we think about the human-centered aspect of things, some folks that are just learning about AI, they're like, oh, my job's going to be replaced by AI. Well, not exactly, because there's always someone that still needs to handle the human side of HR and the human side of running a business, right? So while AI can help us with some of those repetitive tasks, it's not going to fully replace us as an individual. Now, what it might do is say, we don't need as many XYZ people in a specific position, but it's certainly not going to eliminate roles in its entirety. Any comments, questions, or concerns? Nope. Okay. So my favorite, I love using AI from the analytics side of things. So in my prior career, I was a benefit broker, and I loved looking at claims data so that we could make better decisions on if we move this lever on our health plan, how will it impact our employees? If we have these chronic conditions, what other things do I need to make sure are included in our total reward strategy so that people have the right resources available to manage their care pathway? If I think about it from a workforce perspective, a lot of these tools help you predict turnover or see patterns. So you can monitor in an HRIS system turnover rates, and you can even drill down and see them by manager. And so sometimes that helps you identify if there's a manager that might need some additional training. Maybe it's someone that was really good at their job. You promoted them, but you forgot to do management training. Uh-oh, right? Because that's a very different set of skills. And so the data will help you identify things like that. Can also help you identify some of the hiring gaps that you might have, or how long it takes you to recruit for a specific position. And with that data, if I think about it, that might tell me, oh, I might need to look in a different database for someone of this skill set, or I might need to refine my job description, or, oh, we're really off on compensation. Although now you have a compensation report that you can look at with new data. So all those things can help, but monitoring that is really important so you can make better decisions. Things like performance management, you can build out, for example, a performance review process where you have the formal annual review, but maybe you also build into your platform a 30, 60, 90-day review for new hires. You might have a different performance review for managers and above, and then one for folks who are not in a leadership position, different things like that. Any questions? Okay. So when we think about AI from an augmentation perspective, right? We've talked a lot about the administrative tasks and how automation can really help lift some of that burden because it creates workflows. And when you build the workflows in up front, it will show you visibly where the breakdown is. And so a lot of times in the workflows, it can't go to the next step until something is done. And so there's the ability to assign certain tasks to certain people so that things don't get missed because we're all human and we're all moving at 1,000 miles an hour, or at least most of us. If we think about it from a decision-making perspective, drawing from the data, we can certainly help our managers and HR leaders make more informed choices surrounding staffing, engagement, and talent development. If we think about how AI can support employee growth, because that's really important, right? All of us want our employees to grow and thrive in their environment. And so if we set them up for success early, that makes all the difference. In HR, we find that most folks leave an organization not because of the organization itself necessarily, but a lot of times it's because of their manager or things going on in their department. Any questions? Nope. Okay. So I talked or alluded to rather earlier that there are some ethical considerations to consider. And the paper that I wrote was on Title VII in AI, which was quite interesting. So that's all around discrimination for those of you that are not familiar with Title VII. And so using AI, we have to pay careful attention as it relates to things like fairness and bias, because again, it's trained by humans. Making sure that the tools that we're using, whatever you put in it is now public because you're training that tool. So things like ChatGPT, you need to be careful with. Don't ever put someone's name in it. Don't ever put things in AI that are confidential because someone could access it at some point in time. Making sure that, when you're creating tools to do recruitment, that your applicant tracking system isn't biased in some way and excluding applications for people that maybe you as a human wouldn't normally exclude, but because it didn't have or it had certain keywords, it gets rejected, so to speak, automatically. If we think about things from a transparency perspective, employees need to really understand how AI is being used in the organization, what type of decision support those tools have, and they need the guardrails. So, creating those policies and procedures around technology in general is certainly important, but also AI, so that people know when and when they cannot use AI. I know, like in Microsoft, for example, they use a tool called Copilot. That tends to be a little bit better, from what I understand from the experts, than maybe a ChatGPT, which is, wide open, so to speak. So if we think about data and privacy and security, again, making sure that your IT department has locked things down in a way in which hackers can't get into the information. Making sure that you have the right insurance in place in the event that you do get hacked, because we're seeing more and more incidents of that. Some emails, they look legit, right? And then someone clicks on something within an email and, oh my goodness, it's now attacked your computer and or the entire infrastructure of the organization. So training is really key in that regard as well. And then also thinking about governance and accountability. So I know many of you on your boards, you probably have attorneys as one of your board members, or accountants or IT experts. And so tap into their knowledge and expertise for their daily work to ask them for their suggestions of how best to set things up. Um, they probably have the most current information, and things are changing literally at lightning speed. So it's hard to stay focused in that area if you're not doing it every single day. And we certainly expect you all to run your nonprofit, not to be technology experts. So um, that's really important. Any comments, questions, or concerns?
Yeah, so we do have a question that did come in from Suzanne. Is there a sample AI policy for an organization? And or should I ask AI to develop it? Smiley face.
Yeah. Um, I'm happy to it when I send those. Julie already has the slides, but um, I'm happy to send Julie a sample policy. Again, you'll need to customize it for your own organization. You can't, when you get a template, you can't just use it as is. You always have to customize it in some way. So, but I will send a template out. Good question. Anyone else? Okay. So if we think about some of the challenges and barriers, this is the first time we have 5 generations in the workforce, right? Pretty crazy. Pretty exciting too, right? Lots of change on the horizon, but also lots of opportunity for the younger generation as folks retire. So while there are lots of opportunities to use AI, we also have to be real about the challenges. Understanding that limited resources can make AI adoption difficult because there is a learning curve and it requires some training, especially around what tools you should or shouldn't use, what you should or shouldn't put in the AI platform. All of those things are really critical. Um, Also, your budgets are tight. You've got really small teams, many of you. Some of you are larger nonprofits. Um, and so making technology investments, it might not be the right time. There might be other priorities that you have. And so making sure that all of your systems talk to each other is really important rather than doing band-aid approaches, because a lot of times we're not taking full advantage, at least my experience in nonprofits, not taking full advantage of all the tools and resources available in various platforms. Also, there's going to be a resistance to change. That's just the reality. Change is the only constant in the world, but yet we have a large number of people that are very resistant. So understanding that sometimes we have to walk through things multiple times, even though that takes more time, that's really important long term. Making sure that people understand that AI is not replacing their role is a really critical conversation to have. I think a lot of people are fearful of that. Making sure that the data quality and integration is there. If you're not a technology expert and you're putting in a new solution, reach out to the vendor that you're utilizing. They usually have training programs available that are part of your contract that you just may not be aware of, and they can help you and your employees. Also, we have to think about those ethical and legal considerations. Nonprofits really have to make sure that AI is used in a fair way, that it complies with various regulations. I realize that most of you are located solely here in central Indiana, but you might have some remote employees that are in other states, and rules are different everywhere. So when in doubt, seek legal counsel or an HR consultant, and they can help you. And, maintaining trust among the staff to understand that there's still a human being in place at your organization. So if you're someone that really likes AI, just make sure that it's also still your own words, because people can tell if you're only using AI and it's not you. So just be aware of that. Any questions from anyone? Oh, okay. So if we think about some of the trends that are happening in the market space, organizations are always looking at ways to improve efficiency, productivity. Time is money, right? As they say. And so making sure that employees certainly are, moving forward with the mission of the organization, but also finding new areas to streamline efficiencies, new areas to learn and grow as an individual. And, you know, smarter HR operations is where we're seeing a pretty heavy influence right now. Again, those repetitive tasks that happen in HR are the things that are really having the strong focus of AI. Making sure that we're freeing up the HR team to focus on more strategic priorities. That's usually what a CEO and CFO is expecting, or in the nonprofit space, an executive director or board chair, right? If we think about data-driven strategies, making sure that we're using the predictive analytics that are in all these tools that we're purchasing so that we know, is the technology working as we expected? Do we need to make some refinements? Do we need to stop doing something? Maybe something's not working as intended, and that's a red flag for us. So each organization will have their own individual challenges and opportunities in the AI space. Making sure that we're optimizing our talent strategies, and there's different ways that you can do that, in the various tools that you have. Making sure that we're improving retention overall in our organizations, right? And then thinking about the employee experience. So what does that look like today for your organization, right? What does learning look like? Is it only face-to-face learning? Is it that we only attend conferences? Is that we're starting to dabble in some e-learning, especially for, some of the courses that everyone needs to take on a regular basis, like anti-harassment training or conflict resolution, or some of the soft skills that maybe make noise in HR. Those might be courses that you could deploy electronically for everyone at the same time of year. And you can pull reporting down. So if you're ever audited or you have a disciplinary situation come up, you can prove whether or not someone took that training. Or even use e-learning as part of a performance improvement plan. So if someone is having trouble with attendance and time management, there's a lot of training around that. If someone is a ineffective communicator, there's a lot of training around that. Or if you have someone that's being promoted into management, there's some new management courses. Because again, when someone goes from a doer to a manager role where they're overseeing people and processes now, that's a huge learning curve. And to set them up for success the right way, we need to make sure that they have the right tools and resources in their toolbox. So the road ahead is all about AI, whether you like it or not. That's your own personal opinion, but it is here to stay. It's not going to go away. There's ways in which AI can really amplify our human potential, and we need to embrace that. Some of us might be quicker to embrace it than others, but that's okay. And then really helping one another achieve greater mission impact by leveraging various tools. There's probably tools out there that help you when you're doing fundraising campaigns, and tools out there like Constant Contact where you can build out a regular cadence of communications to go to your supporters. All those different things are available, certainly. Any questions? I know it's been a lot in a short period of time.
So Teresa asked, what are the top 3 things that should be included in an initial staff training on AI?
Well, in my opinion, first of all, it should be the policies and procedures that are associated with AI for your organization. You have to give them some guardrails, because if you don't, they're human. They're going to use it in any way they think is okay unless you give them parameters of where it's not okay. Secondly, I would say you need to do a risk assessment of your overall technology infrastructure. And there are a lot of PNC brokers that can help you with that analysis. Many of them specialize in cyber. And to me, that would be really important if I were running a business. And then probably third, well, I guess I kind of talked about three things really. So policies and procedures, training and development as it relates to AI, and then making sure that you've done a risk assessment, making sure you have the right infrastructure in place so that there's not an issue.
And piggybacking off of that a little bit, Susan, I think that's a great starting point because kind of looking at as far as what we have seen is just, oh, we got a little success. A lot of times it's in fund development, it's saving a lot of time. It's actually, being very efficient with their donor acquisition and where they want to go with their goals. But then they're dabbling in everything, as far as the data analysis. They might have some kind of proprietary way that they're doing their programs. Maybe they're putting in some, maybe possibly confidential information with their strategic planning. And
For sure.
a
Yeah,
little bit of
so
everything that I was like, whoa.
unfortunately, a lot of people do not realize that whatever you put into an AI platform is public, so to speak. Like an HRIS system, it's got security measures built into it so that personal information cannot be taken, right? But like just an open platform like ChatGPT, if you put it in ChatGPT, and it's the free version in particular, there's going to be less security protocols in place. I see Tina's question. I don't use the paid version. I just don't. So I'm extra cautious if I ever use that tool. And then, using Copilot is what my particular organization prefers to use. And so that's what I use most often. So even when I'm like typing out an email, um, good to know, Tina. Thank you. Um, Even when I'm typing an email, Copilot will say, use this to make the sentence stronger, or this is easier for someone to understand or something like that. So, those of you that are not really good at grammar, AI can be a really effective tool for that. So, just again, don't put any protected information in there.
Excellent advice. And a helpful tip that has been helpful to us was really pinpointing what are these repeatable tasks that
Mm-hmm.
we might consider making either an AI agent or developing some strong prompting with. And that was, first of all, just creating a very simplistic workflow for only one service. In a
Yep.
nonprofit, it might be only one program. And we actually even got even a little bit more granular, one service for one of our audience because we had
Mm-hmm.
a few audience that was using this service and kind of going through, if it would be marketing or fund development all the way through till they exit the program. And then that kind of gave us an overflow. First of all, it pointed out this is where we have some bottlenecks and we need to actually fix things. um, and then we were able to say, hey, this is something that we're doing 3 times, 5 times a month. This would be really good. But then we actually went a step further, and you pointed this out, Susan, that we wrote out the SOPs and documenting them just to make sure everyone was in agreement, and there was a better way to do it, getting human feedback from the
Mm-hmm.
team instead of just one person going in and saying, hey, AI, write this SOP for me. Like this was, people writing an SOP. And then from there, using what's the best way to use AI to make this repetitive to get those consistent
You
results.
bring up a great point, which you should always have all stakeholders at the table when you're building SOPs, especially if you're not the doer that's going to be using the SOP or following the SOP, because sometimes there's things that you don't think about that actually make the process more complicated. And that's the last thing that you want to do because your employees will be extraordinarily frustrated. Anyone else?
Feel free to come off mute if you'd like to. Do you have suggestions, Susan, as far as just training? As far as prompting, or we've talked a lot about planning. It's a strategic planning.
Mhm.
Um, what would be your first step, and maybe a second step? Um,
So I always like to start with a SWOT analysis. So when you're thinking about like you're visioning things that might be able to be automated for the future, if you start with a SWOT analysis, that kind of helps you prioritize, and then you can build that into a plan of action. And so there might be things that you automate in, let's say, 2026 and other things you automate in 2027. Again, you don't want to do more than what you can actually achieve because that doesn't set you up for good success. And I would say, as a nonprofit, I would want input from my board. So, like, what are things that are important for the outside world to be automated, and what things do we need to consider for what the board might be thinking. Um, I know some people are not comfortable talking to board members, just that's just not their normal nature, and that's okay. But maybe if you make sure that your questions are asked by someone who is comfortable, would be critical in my opinion. Anyone else? All right. Well, my information is available. I'm going to send you all an email later this afternoon. So if you need to reach out to me separately, you're welcome to do so. Both my email and my phone number will be there. So you're welcome to reach out to me at any time.
Thank you, Susan. Feel free to put thanks in the chat, and let Susan know how much you appreciated her. And have fun, make this a priority. We would love to hear your feedback as you're going down this AI journey, what's working and what's not working. And how can we, iron sharpens iron. That would be great, maybe on an upcoming HR peer group call, to be able to hear each other's success and challenges. So thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everyone.